Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast, is sponsored by the UPS Store Canada.
I look like the Lollipop Man. Lollipop Man and Birdman here for Standing By the podcast. You know what I got stuck in my head?
What?
Is that Billy Joel song? Heart attack, because we have David Eicher on with us today.
That's right, yeah. And this isn't going to be any fun at all. I don't know if you know, David owns a chain of funeral homes, and we're going to be discussing the bereavement process.
Yeah. We're already telling stupid stories. How about that?
Yeah, go figure.
I'm Terry DeMonte. That's Ted Bird. Standing By is the name of the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get started, we have to say thank you to our supporters, and we have several of them. And they are longtime supporters of ours, have been for many years. And I was just saying to David, we feel very, very lucky that we can do this podcast because of the grace and the support from these families that we've been speaking on their behalf for many, many years. I didn't properly structure that sentence, but you know what I'm saying.
It's the 5 families, too.
Yes.
We have 5 sponsors, family-run businesses.
And our title sponsor is the UPS Store Canada. If you run a business, you probably already know about the UPS Store Canada. One of the things they do that we haven't talked about that I love is mailbox services. A lot of people don't know this, but they offer mailbox rentals. So you can do mail forwarding. They can collect your packages if you're out of town a lot and you don't want the porch pirates taking your packages off. You can have them delivered to a UPS store in your community. There are 370 stores across country, and all of them are run by an entrepreneur that lives in your community. So they know what it's like to run a small business, and you don't have to have a small business to go into a UPS store. If you've got something fragile you need to ship to an aunt in Saskatchewan, they can handle that. They can package things for you. They can ship things for you. They can shred important documents. They can help you with passport photos. All the things that surround running a house or running a business, the UPS Store Canada can help you with. And all of the people, like I said, that run them understand how important it is to you to get packages out on time and to make sure things don't get broken, that documents are signed and arrive on time when you've got a deal going. They can handle anything to make your business sing. It's the UPS Store Canada. You go to the website, theupsstore.ca, and our thanks to David Drucker and the over 300 locations and entrepreneurs at the UPS store across the country.
Why would you shred important documents? Have you seen those important documents of mine? Oh, shit.
I told you to sign those. Idiot. Our guest today is a longtime friend who has invited me for breakfast 1,000 fucking times.
It sounds a little creepy when you put it like that.
And no, but you know what?
You want to go to breakfast?
When I saw you, I felt guilty because God bless my good friend Esteban, who produced the morning show for so many years. And
sounds like he's passed away.
Well, no,
God bless him.
He's not a producer anymore.
He had a good run.
Yeah.
He did good.
He was a great producer and a great big part of a very successful run at the radio station. And probably once a month he'd say, Acker and Joey are having breakfast and they'd like you to join. And every time I would say no. I hope you didn't think I was being an arsehole. I was usually just going to sleep.
That's what we figured. We knew the timing wasn't great, but Joey and I, ironically, for comedians, are both morning people.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah, it's not normal. It makes those late shows challenging, I can tell you that.
No kidding. David Acker is, let's talk about his history, shall we?
Well, holy smokes,
Yes.
What hasn't he done? He's a comedian, he's a magician.
A club owner.
Yeah.
A
breakfast haver.
A breakfast haver, a mentor of young comedians, a supporter of the comic scene across the country, a dog wrangler.
I don't know about wrangling.
Not wrangling, but you have magic dogs, don't you?
Boy, that's quite a metaphor. I do have magic dogs. Thank you, Terry. I did work. There's a wonderful national organization called the Super Dogs, and they have these are all family pets of wonderful trainers across the country, and they come together to do shows, typically during the summer, although they work all year. In huge venues, in arenas. And for quite a few years, I wrote shows for them and with them. And these things would tour over the summer and hit over 1 million people. Really a huge fan base. So although I don't have a dog myself, I had an opportunity to work with these people with amazing dogs and fell in love with all of them.
Didn't you just do it? Because I saw you were going to be out in British Columbia
last summer. I was part of a show that we put together that was sort of a tribute to superhero movies called Paw Avengers. And that we were in BC at the PNE for the whole run, which was 15 or 18 days. I
was trying not to die at the time, and that's why I didn't get in touch with you.
And you do the animation too,
I
Dave.
still found it a bit selfish.
Yeah, it was.
That you couldn't make it. I'm not going to lie.
You do the announcing at those shows
Not
as
all
well?
of them, but I happen to be there at the PNE hosting. But they have all sorts of hosts all over the country who do great work. It's a really amazing experience, and I was lucky to be part of it.
It's just dawned on me that part of your trademark is your glasses. Am I mistaken about that?
Because I'd love to trademark glasses. I feel like I could collect some dough on that.
No, but it's part of your look. Like I'm looking at, where do you get these? These are beautiful
These
glasses.
are nice glasses. I got these somewhere downtown. As I understand it, more people are ordering glasses online now than walking into stores. I still like to walk into a store, try things on. And I've been wearing glasses since I was a kid. I used to do material about it in my set. I had a bit about... what was it? Everybody in my family, all the guys in my family wear glasses. My uncle has glasses that are like this. So you ever see those, the Coke bottle glasses? We tried getting him contact lenses a couple of years ago, but he couldn't close his eyes over them. It's like a couple of test tubes. That was a bit I used to do in the 90s.
It still resonates. It's a good bit.
I ordered glasses online a few years ago and wore them for 2 years and didn't see a goddamn thing.
Wow.
And then I went back to the optometrist and I got the right prescription and I bought these. And these are Hugo Boss frames.
They look great.
So they weren't cheap, but they work. And they do look good. And I've had more than one woman tell me, hey, you look good in those. And that counts for something.
There's some things I don't understand about the internet, and ordering pants, glasses.
Anything you can't try on.
Or a car.
Right.
I see the ads on TV lately for, order a car online, and the car is on a tow truck and pulls up in front of your house. I'm not buying a car without driving
You're not home. They leave it in the lobby of the apartment building.
Right.
Somebody takes it.
Hey, your car's here.
What apartment is this for?
Its glasses are the same way. Don't you want to stand in front of a mirror?
Absolutely. There's all sorts of variations.
I was just being cheap, and it was the wrong way to go. It's worth spending the extra money. Something
frugal. I think would be. I don't think you can say cheap anymore.
What an old guy conversation to be having.
Yeah, really.
Damn internet. David, let's. I want to talk about or start at the beginning, not the very beginning, but I remember. I don't know how this happened, but Ted and I got involved in the Montreal comedy scene on the periphery as radio announcers. We tried to support as much as we could, and we ended up arriving on the Montreal comedy scene at a time where it was really beginning to bubble over with talent. There was, you and Joey Elias and John Rogers and
Sean Keane, Heidi Foss, Barry Julian.
Yeah, Jeff
Rothpan.
Jeff Rothpan. There was this massive amount of talent, and
there was a wave.
There was a wave, and part of what I think helped accelerate that wave was the Montreal show, because it was a showcase. Ted and I hosted this show for the Just for Laughs people, and that's where we became exposed to this amazing comedy scene. I remember saying to Ted, I think the very first night at Club Soda, I said, Jesus Christ, this is quite an array of really talented people all in one place.
There was a confluence of heavy hitters at the time. So I guess we're going back to the early mid-'90s.
Yeah.
And for the people who don't know, some of the names that we've mentioned, Jeff Rothpan is a Montreal comic who went on to do The Tonight Show, I think 5 times.
Yep.
Barry Julian is now co-executive producer of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. John Rogers went on to, he's a producer on shows like Leverage. I think he co-created The Librarians, or certainly is a producer on that. So these people, Heidi Foss has her first animated feature film hitting movie theaters this fall.
Wow.
So that the core group of people, and that's just a handful of them, there's more to speak of. The core group of people from that era were hard workers, heavy hitters, knew how to take the stage for 5, 6, 7 minutes and rip the room apart, and nobody wanted to follow anybody else. But all the styles were very different. Sean Keane is another example. He's passed away, but Sean was the first one from that era to get a significant TV show. He did back in the day, and it was rare for Canadians to get this, he got Caroline's Comedy Hour. And that other than late night television like The Tonight Show, shows on A&E like Evening at the Improv, Comedy on the Road, Caroline's Comedy Hour, they were, if you were starting to get those, you were starting to get noticed by the industry and outside of the industry. And Sean was the first from that era to get a significant TV show. So, Sean would come back from that, and we're all, looking at the god that is Sean Keane, and I mean that in the most positive way. So there was a real energy where we were supportive, we were competitive, and it was all happening at the same time. There's certainly lots of great talent in Montreal right now, but it's more fragmented.
Right. I thought Sean Keane was going to be a huge star. His style was so unique, and it was so different. And a little odd and off-putting. If you'd never seen him before, you were like, what the hell is this guy on about? But he was so talented. And I remember John Rogers shot this pilot, which I thought was terrific, but CBS didn't think it was so terrific. And it's okay because now he has a parking spot at one of the big studios in Hollywood.
He's doing fine, yeah.
He's doing okay. It really was a hell of a run. And to take it back to you, you were part of it. How did you become part of it?
Well, I came into it through a back door, really. I was doing magic. I was a magician, so I turned up on stage at there was a comedian, and is a comedian, by the name of Rick Bronson in Montreal, who moved away from the city, who was one of my closest friends, is one of my closest friends. He opened a comedy club in Edmonton. He has a couple in the States now as well.
And in BC.
That's right, yeah. More recently in BC. Rick was a magician. I was a magician. He was starting to do stand-up comedy and transitioning his act into stand-up, and was doing very well locally. And I was looking on that and thought that there was already kind of a humorous angle in my close-up sleight of hand magic, and I thought maybe I'd try stand-up, but I was too chicken to just tell jokes. So my first time on stage at a comedy club was with 2 other comedians. We went on stage as we were called the Running Gags. And it was me, Barry Julian, who we've mentioned, and Richard Sanders, a wonderful magician who still lives in Montreal, very innovative, has created a whole bunch of material that other magicians have done around the world. And we went on stage together because none of us really had the balls to just go up alone and tell jokes. And we did a 3-man magic act. And that sort of, some things worked from that, and then we each started doing our own stuff separately. And I found that when I was doing magic and mixing it with jokes, the jokes were starting to do better than the magic. Particularly at a comedy club, you want a kind of a high laughs per minute ratio. So I was starting to write more jokes, and they were getting laugh, 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 and then I'd take out a deck of cards, and everything would kind of slow down. So that's when I realized, okay, the scales have tipped a little bit, and I put away the magic and just started writing stand-up. And that was the transition for me, but it was an odd way in, for sure. Yeah.
How do you become a magician?
You have to be very lonely. When I was a kid, I got a magic trick in my stocking, a trick that magicians will recognize. It's called a ball and vase. And the trick is that you, at its most fundamental level, that you have a little plastic vase and you open it and there's a red ball inside. And then when you close it, snap your fingers and open it again, the ball's gone. It's self-working. And I was fascinated not so much by the trick of it, but by the mechanics of it. And because I was interested in the mechanics of it, my mother saw that. I wasn't really into sports. I wasn't really doing anything else. She found out there was a magic store in Montreal. She brought me down to the magic store, and I was introduced to this whole world of mechanical devices that can fool people. I was 9 at the time, and I would show that trick to adults, and they would be fooled. So now a 9-year-old is fooling adults. I thought that was interesting.
It's the phone, Terry.
This isn't awkward at all. That's my mother, by the way.
It's very...
Don't give away any secrets of magic.
That's right. That's Copperfield. What did you tell them?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So all that to say, I was drawn into the world of magic by the mechanics of these tricks. And then after a year or two, I started to come up with my own tricks at a fundamental level. And one or two of them started to fool other magicians. And it turns out that I was thinking in a way that some magicians hadn't been thinking. And I realized I might have a bit of a skill for this. So I started inventing tricks and writing them and submitting them to magic magazines, and some of them started to get published, and that was the path for me. So it was really more of the invention
totally
side.
Self-taught.
At the time, I don't think it's fair to say self-taught. Unlike today, where you can go on YouTube or Instagram and get tutorials for anything, at the time, if you wanted to learn magic, you had to read books. You had to meet other magicians. Okay. You had to go where magicians were.
Okay, so did you find a mentor or mentors?
At the time, the mentor for me was the magic store, and the owners of the magic store, Phil and Evelyn Matlin, who owned that magic store and had for years and did for years afterwards. It's a magic store called Perfect Magic, and they were very much my mentors. They would steer me towards content, tricks, books that they knew I could handle, they knew I was ready for. And when I learned a little more, they would steer me towards some stuff that was more challenging. So in that sense, I would say they were my mentors. But at the time, you really needed to learn from other magicians or from books. It was more challenging. And I think as a result, to some degree, more rewarding too. Now, if somebody sees a trick that fools them and they know a keyword or two that are in line with that trick, they can enter that into YouTube and usually find out how it's done. Right. And that spoils the magic, I would say, in more ways than one.
Do you still dabble when you do stand-up? Do you still dabble in magic?
If I'm doing a long set, 45 minutes, I have a trick I came up with that I actually published in one of my books where I go into I have a deck of cards and I have 6 people choose a card. And I tell them, magicians never do this because we can't follow this many cards. I have no idea what cards you've chosen. And then they all come on stage. And it allows for a whole lot of interaction. And then somebody in the audience, I gave a folded up prediction at the beginning of the show. And I asked them to mix up the people on the stage. And then that person picks a person. And that person shows the card they picked. And then the person in the audience unfolds the prediction. And it's the card that person picked. So all that to say, because there's so much audience interaction with that, it allowed me to keep the laughs per minute up.
Right.
So the deck of cards didn't slow me down. It actually kind of sped me up. I had to go into the crowd and run around. So that I'll still do every now and then and close with a trick like that.
I forgot you're extremely well known in, is it the magician community? Magic community? Is that?
I published a few books, and as a result of that, I was invited to lecture.
Yes.
I performed at the Magic Castle a bunch of times.
Wow.
So I've toured a lot doing that. I haven't for quite a few years. My last magic book was out in 2011 or 2012. So that would be the last time I did a big tour connected with that. But there was a period where I was very active in the community, writing for magazines, and very invested in what other people were coming up with as well.
Was that? I'm trying to figure out how to. Was that? Like hockey players have an innate talent. I used to say nobody taught Guy Lafleur how to skate. He knew how to skate.
Right.
People helped him polish that skill, but that skill was already there.
Right.
Do you believe that to be true about magicians?
Well, you're talking about a few different things. There's a skill for developing and inventing tricks, which I think is a mental skill, and I think that that's one path. There's a skill, a technical skill, and then there's a performance skill.
Okay.
It's pretty rare that all three of those meet. There are definitely a handful of guys out there who can do all of them, but I would say in all cases they're innate. And you're right. You kind of polish them off. Usually somebody's a little better at one than another, so they have to work harder at one of them.
And when you're on stage, doing, either speaking about magic or performing magic, does it compare to the buzz from comedy?
That's a very interesting question. It's a different type of rewarding. And also the goals of those two arts are polar opposites. The goal of stand-up ultimately is truth. So we all know that ultimately the funniest things are the things that seem truest.
Right.
The goal of magic is deception.
Ah, okay.
So it's actually challenging to marry those two things.
Yeah.
And also people's experience of them are different. So when you've had a particularly good stand-up set, there's a warmth in the room because everybody has experienced some kind of a common truth. When you've had a particularly good magic show, they're impressed that they were deceived, they were entertained, but I don't know about that warmth.
Okay. That's fascinating to me. That's
right.
That's a fascinating overview of it. I'm wondering, is that why because you've kind of veered off, correct me if I'm wrong, in the last...
I will.
The last 10, 12 years, you're more invested in the business side of things now, are you not?
Yes. So I guess somewhere around 12 years ago, the Comedy Nest, which thankfully continues to be, but at the time was certainly an institution in Montreal, it looked like they were going to close. Ernie Butler, the founder of the Nest, had passed away. His kids had taken over operating the club, were doing a terrific job, but it wasn't really their world. They had their own things they wanted to move on to. So they were trying to sell it or at least pass it along. And myself and a business partner who also had a background in stand-up by the name of Phil Shushat took over the club. And as it turns out, although I have an okay mind for business, I guess I was a bit naive in terms of how much you have to invest personally when you take over a business like that.
Time, money, or both?
More time. I mean, ultimately, there's money involved as well. But in theory, it's generating revenue. But certainly in terms of time, I was sort of hoping that you could go in, kind of rebuild the model for a couple of years and then step back and let it run itself. It turns out you have to be more hands-on, particularly with something like a comedy club where there's so many moving parts. The programming varies from night to night. And as a result, the audience varies from night to night, and the marketing varies from week to week. You really have to be present. So when we took over the Comedy Nest, it did take me away from some of the other things I was doing, including developing new magic tricks and other stuff like that, for sure.
You mentioned Phil Shushat. Phil had one of my favorite jokes of all time about the Israeli curling team. It's made up entirely of Filipinos because that's who sweeps for the Jews.
That's a perfect lead-in to comedy today and where society has pushed comedy to go and where Twitter is pushing comedians to go. What's your take on the state of, oh boy, you can't do jokes about that?
Well, society has always steered the course of, I presume, every art, but certainly I've lived it with comedy. So it's not just today. I think people are more empowered to steer the course than they used to be because of social media. It seems to me there's still an audience for almost everything, but it's become more fractal. So comedians who are particularly dirty now have an audience that appeals to, and all the variations and varieties of that. There's certainly still an audience. There's lots of comedy clubs, comedians finding their audience.
Is there anything that makes you hesitate, Dave, that wouldn't have made you hesitate 10 years ago?
Everything. You want to think twice or three times about everything now, for sure. Yeah. But as a comedian, your first goal when you sit down to write is this funny? And then you look at the other potential challenges with a particular bit. But I mean, if you go back through the eras, there's stuff in the early 1900s you wouldn't be doing now that was offensive for all sorts of different reasons. And each era has its challenges in that regard. And we're in a new era right now for that, for sure.
But isn't comedy supposed to be part of social commentary and
pushing boundaries?
Aren't you supposed to push boundaries? And isn't it okay to be offended once in a while?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about a few different things there. I remember somebody at Just for Laughs once telling me that despite the branding and marketing of the Nasty Show, they would still get complaints following shows, people that were offended by something. And at the time, it was shocking to me that you could go to something called the Nasty Show and send an email complaint about being offended. So, whether people are offended by things, that's you cast a wide net with that question. There's things to be legitimately offended by, and then there's other stuff. But certainly every institution has had to react to that in terms of comedy, has had to react to that in some way. You just have to.
Yeah, I find it, I'll give you an example, and maybe this doesn't count. I'm a massive Louis C.K. fan. I saw Louis C.K. at Club Soda with Ted, and when he came out on stage, I remember saying to Ted, what kind of name is that? What a stupid name. Is that his last name or what? Anyway, he was on stage for about 4 seconds when Ted and I were doubled over, and we'd never heard anything that clever. And we'd never heard anything that vulgar. I'm not going to do it any justice, but, he said he wanted to make a lot of money and donate to a hospital and get them to open a wing and change his name to Cunty McShitballs so that they would have to, that
have to name it the Cunty McShitballs Cancer Institute.
I don't know if you know this, but Bob Hope used to do that joke. Louis ripped it off from Bob Hope.
But the thing about Louis C.K.
And now you're not allowed to like him. But
I still like him.
And that was because of some, admittedly despicable behavior.
But he's such a good comic. He made fodder from that on his album. He said, "Do you want to talk about it?"
Yeah.
And the crowd's, talk about it.
And he's already back.
Yeah, and
he's back. He's doing shows. He's back.
He said, "I like to masturbate, and I don't like to be alone."
Wow, I haven't heard that. Wow.
But that's clever and well crafted and relevant, and he's laughing at himself.
Yeah.
In that instance,
Yeah.
and I think so much of it has to do, Dave, with how well crafted the joke is, and I think Phil's joke about the Filipinos on the Israeli curling team is a perfect example. That is a well-crafted, intelligent joke.
But today you could be accused of being racist.
Well, I don't know. I don't think Phil could. That might be a case of Phil can get away with it because he's Jewish. I don't know. There's a line that I use when and I don't do stand-up as regularly as David, but when I do, there's a line that I use that always gets a laugh, and I talk about exactly what we're talking about now. We live in touchy times, and it seems like you can't say anything without somebody getting offended, and I blame the Jews. And it always gets a laugh because people understand, and I point out afterwards, I'm not blaming the Jews. I'm using irony as a comedic device because over the centuries, the Jews were blamed for everything, right? And the Jews laughed the hardest at that joke.
Right. I don't know how often people have tried to use irony as a defense. I don't know if it would hold up in a court of law, that's for sure. I didn't mean to rob the bank. I was being ironic. But I hear you. I can't speak for Phil. Would he do that joke on stage today? Phil doesn't do stand-up anymore.
That's too bad because Phil's good and funny.
I agreed on both counts. I wonder if he would think twice about it now. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't know if he would do it, or I don't know if he would gauge the audience and make the choice, make a game time decision.
So you don't feel a cold wind blowing. You're just saying that's the evolution of the world, and that's the way. Like you're not spooked by it, or It is what
Spooked,
it is.
No, I saw.
But you adjust to it.
You have to adjust. And I saw 2 edits of an interview with Red Skelton on The Tonight Show. They're both available on YouTube. And I don't think the fact that there are 2 edits was intentional. I think one is just the full interview was finally released, and one was an abbreviated version, an edited version. And the edited version is especially charming. Red Skelton is funny and delightful. And the full interview has a few lines and words in it and references. And I'm not suggesting Red Skelton was being racist, but he was referencing things from his era in a way that even I was watching now and feeling a bit uncomfortable. So I found it interesting that with one edit, take out those 2 lines, however many there were, and the person comes across one way, and then the full interview, you get a little glimpse of something else. We're living, and again, I don't think it's that he was revealing something about his personality that was problematic. I just think he was talking more openly about stuff in the past. All that to say, at the time when that interview aired, I don't think it would have resonated negatively with anybody.
Right. Because of the era.
Somebody decided,
right,
I'll just tighten this up in case these 2 things he mentions are considered offensive. So adjustments are made for sure. And I think intent also has to be considered profoundly. I think people can make honest mistakes on stage with no hate in their heart, no intent to offend. And I think that was always true. I think it's true today. Do I feel a cold wind blowing? Do I think it's the end of comedy as an art? No. Do I think painting is over? No. Do I think music is over? No. I think it will adjust and evolve on its own path.
You gotta stop throwing shit on the paintings, though. You gotta stop doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The soup on the
soup on the
Van Gogh that doesn't fly.
Yeah. Were you a student of?
I think you could end that question at were you a student after this interview? By the way, were you a student? Because yikes.
No, were you a student of comedy? Like I grew up in an era where I couldn't wait for Johnny to come out from behind the curtain, and I couldn't wait to find out who, he usually had a stand-up on.
Yeah.
And he was the kingmaker at the time. That's what everybody worked towards. I've heard Letterman say it. I've heard Seinfeld say it, that all they wanted was they needed to get a polished 7 minutes so they could get on Carson and change their life. Were you a student of that era?
Because I came into stand-up through a back door, through magic, not as much as you. Certainly it's common knowledge now that those days are done. You don't do one late-night television appearance and your career's made. At the time, after you did Carson, you tripled your rate. You were starting to do corporate shows. None of that's true anymore. Those are certainly important opportunities, but not career makers the way they were. And I romanticize that era rather when I think back about the Carson Tonight Show. And of course, Johnny Carson, there have been lots of biographies written and documentaries made, and was not a perfect person by any means. No. Could that Johnny Carson survive in today's era with his personal baggage and challenges? I don't know. When I look back at the era, I romanticize it. Mm-hmm. I don't see past the fourth wall. And I do miss the absence of a fourth wall today to a degree. It just doesn't exist anymore. And I wouldn't mind not knowing everything about everybody.
Right. There was I remember when Andre Philippe Gagnon went on Carson.
Sure.
That was the talk of Quebec for months. And I remember
also he killed it. It was a great set.
And I remember holding my breath when he came out for him. And I remember when Rothpan was on, and I was everything I could do not to jump off the couch and go, I know him. There he is on Carson.
Rothpan was the first from our era to get the Tonight Show, and we all gathered at a now defunct bar I'm blanking on the name, but it doesn't matter. It's long gone. And to watch, so there, I don't know how many comedians there were in the room, 20 or 25 of us at this bar, watching in real time at whatever it was, 11 at night, 11:30. And the other people in the bar didn't know what was happening, but we had them change all the TVs over to the Tonight Show, and it kind of spread through the bar that it was a Montrealer on, and it was his first time on the Tonight Show. And everybody got quiet, and all these tables. It wasn't just us, Jeff's friend. It was everybody around us. And Jeff also smoked his set that night. He absolutely, I don't remember how many applause breaks, but we were counting applause breaks. So that's for people listening who haven't done stand-up, applause breaks are currency for a comedian.
Was it still Carson or was it Jay Leno at that point?
No, it was Leno. It was Leno at that point.
Was it Leno at that point?
Yeah, pardon me. I might have said Carson, but it was Leno. And so he'd get his first applause break, and all the comedians would go, 1. I was like, what's going on here? And he'd get another applause break, 2. I had no idea what was going on, but I remember the energy in that room was electric. And by the end of the set, of course, he had killed for the whole room.
Right.
And everybody applauded and cheered. So so that energy you're talking about with Andre Philippe Gagnon, we lived it with Jeff.
Yeah, I miss that. Because you hold your breath for Jeff.
Yeah.
And when the applause break comes, you exhale.
Yes.
Because you think, okay, he's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an era that's long gone and I think missed.
Well, conversely, things can go badly on those experiences. I remember a wonderful comedian who's still a terrific comedian, a great writer by the name of, and you're gonna sidetrack this based on his name, but his name's Marty Putz. And Putz used to work. I believe he wrote for Just for Laughs as well. He did all sorts of shows, and finally, after years and years of doing stand-up, got the Tonight Show. And Marty Putz was a prop comedian, very original. And his opening bit, I won't do it justice, but physically what happened was he grabbed an iron and he would iron half of his face, and half of his face was flat, and then he'd move on to his next thing. And there was context for this, which I don't remember. But my point is, after all these years of slogging, he finally got the Tonight Show, and he was on, and he grabbed his iron, and the thing broke. It all broke. And the whole thing fell apart in his hands, and his opening bit broke. And this, I have no idea how long this prop had been functioning at bars and restaurants and comedy clubs, but it decided it wouldn't hang on for one more show, the Tonight Show.
Oh,
so he was thrown off by it. He ended up doing absolutely fine, but I remember watching that, and my heart dropped into my stomach, and I just thought, you couldn't hang on for one more show, you piece of plastic.
You piece of shit
plastic. Exactly. I didn't know if we could swear on this podcast.
Is he a Montrealer, Dave?
Marty has been to Montreal a lot. He's a Canadian, but not a Montrealer.
Right. Patty was a massive fan of his and a good friend of his.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Terrific guy.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always work out on the Tonight Show.
No, that's a tough thing to watch as an audience member. I remember standing behind the curtain at the Montreal show, and you were guaranteed with you, Rogers, and Sean Keane,
DJ McCarthy,
and DJ,
Joey,
and
Heidi Foss,
and all of those names.
Yeah.
And I remember one, I didn't know anything about comedy, and all I knew was going on that stage for me was terrifying. I thought, how do you go out there and you have all these eyes looking at you like, okay, entertain me, hotshot, make me laugh. It's quite terrifying. And I remember coming off the stage as the host. And I forget which comedian it was, but grabbed me by the arm and said, "How are they?" And I thought, who? How are who? Like what? He's the audience.
How are they?
The audience. How's the room? And I didn't understand that until we had hosted a few of those events, and I understood that there was a temperature to be taken as the host. You were supposed to take the temperature of the room and try and fire them up and get them.
Right. Certainly get them. The primary goal of a host is just to get everybody functioning as a unit. So so a host doesn't necessarily have to kill comedically.
No. I knew nobody was there to see us. They were there to see the comedians.
I'm not so sure that having recognized local personalities. I think people probably were there and were happy to see you.
No one was there to see you do shtick.
No.
Because they know they were there to see. Hey, look, it's Terry DeMonte, the show Morning Man.
Right.
That's cool.
Right.
That's true.
You were there to say good evening and thanks for coming out. You're in for a great show. You weren't there to go, where are you from?
Right, exactly. And thank you for not doing that.
A priest and a hang on.
Oh, good
a
Lord.
clown, a priest, and a
Cut his mic.
get a red light.
Cut
red
the
light,
mic.
Well, I want you to explain the red light in a moment. But the other thing I remember, and this was a point I wanted to make. There is nothing worse than watching a comedian die on stage. There is such a horror to being in the audience or behind the curtain side stage going, oh, Jesus, he's
going
bombing. This is not going well. It's a special kind of misery, I would imagine, for a stand-up comedian. And I think it's unique to that craft.
You're right, because if you're a musician, you have the guitar to fall back on. If you're a magician, you have the card trick to fall back on. For somebody to completely die, the audience isn't just not liking your jokes, they also don't like you.
Okay.
So that is the particular pain of bombing on stage. It's one thing to do to get to have a 3 on 10 set or a 4 on 10. It means they like you, they were hoping it would be better, but they're not into the jokes. If it's a 0 or less, they don't like you, and that is a real pain. And I think you're right. I think it's unique to stand-up. But what happens is, I mean, stand-up in some ways is the highest highs and the lowest lows from night to night, although in theory you don't have those lowest lows as often. The more experienced you get, you also learn to dull the edges on those. So a real bomb or a bad show isn't as painful as it was when you first started. The more experienced you get, you learn how to manage that. The problem with that is that also dulls the edges on the highest highs. So it's also hard to get that elation that you used to get when you really kill. So there is a bit of a compromise there.
What do you think of that?
Well, I'm fascinated by it, and I don't mean to turn the podcast into a technical examination of the craft of stand-up comedy, but these are all things that always fascinated me from being not in it, but close enough to watch it from behind the curtain.
Right.
That gives you an interesting
certainly
perspective.
Invested in it.
Yeah.
If not in it, you were invested in it.
And I felt, and I know Ted did too, we felt invested in it. We felt like we were helping the local comedy scene. We talked about the clubs on the radio.
Yeah.
We tried to have comedians on the radio. The Montreal show, I think we did it for 18 years.
We did it for a long time.
Was it that many?
Yeah,
well,
I think
you
it was.
You folks, the comedy community knew that you had our backs. And there was one other Montrealer who did and continues to also, and that's Bill Brownstein from the Gazette.
Yeah.
Always had the local community's back for stand-up.
Yeah.
And we always appreciated it.
Yeah. Another guy who we haven't mentioned, he wasn't from the same posse that you were from and that we spoke of earlier, but he wasn't long on your heels with Sugar Sammy, who's gone on to huge success.
Oh, yeah.
Huge
I mean,
success.
You can't be more famous from Montreal.
Yeah.
Certainly I imagine he also is quite well known in English as well, but certainly in French Canada and over in France, he carried that over magnificently. And you're right, he dabbled in stand-up, I guess, around that time, but really committed to it a little bit after that. I don't know too much about his story, but I know where it's ended up.
It was our second go-around at Shome that we had Sammy on the show one day, and he made fodder of that from his shows. He would say, I was on Shome with Terry and Ted, and people were calling up and going, who's that guy? What's his name? Super Packy? Is he is he at your club tonight? We'd like to see him.
Well, he tells a great story of having to take the bus to the gigs. And he would be on the 105 on Sherbrooke going up to wherever, and then said he always tells me this. He was on one Friday plugging the weekend gig, and he said he got recognized on the bus. Hey, you're that guy that was on Shome this morning with Terry and Ted, and has always been grateful to that little tiny bit of support.
Yeah, right.
But he is the quintessential Bill 101 kid. And he mined that for all it's worth in such a clever way. And to your point about people have to like the guy on stage.
Right.
People love Sugar Sammy.
Absolutely.
And he can get away with, going after the Greeks, the separatists, the Frenchmen, the Italians, Punjabis, whatever it is.
Well, don't kid
a,
yourself. He's getting flack.
Yeah, he is.
Absolutely.
This
He's
time
getting
around,
flack.
yeah.
And I don't mean that he's. I'm not suggesting that you're not right about people liking him and getting away with it. But he's taking
getting
his
some blowback.
He's taking his bullets too.
But he knows exactly what he's doing.
Absolutely.
And that's fuel for the car.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
the more people lash out and the more people who scream about what he's doing, that to me, that just drives ticket sales as far as I'm concerned.
It does, but once they get in the room, you have to be funny.
Yeah.
So it drives ticket sales, but he
is.
delivers, exactly.
And he delivers in a big, big way. And if you've seen his clips all over social media, part of it is the massive smile that comes across his face.
Sure.
And
He's
the
likable.
warmth that he
So
generates.
charming.
He's
Yeah.
such a likable man.
And a comfort level. We talked about this prior to the podcast, but there's a comfort level that he walks on stage with. It's not arrogance.
Yeah.
It's confidence.
It's confidence, but it's the confidence sort of born out of repetition. And when he walks out, the audience is, even if they've never heard of Sugar Sammy or seen him, the audience is immediately put at ease. They're like, I know this guy's going to be good. I can feel it by how he's walking to the microphone.
Yeah.
Bob Hope and Seinfeld both made reference to that.
That makes sense.
Saying the audience is already with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember somebody asking Jerry Seinfeld in an interview I watched about nerves. And he said, no, I know they're already, as I walk out, they're already with me. He said, I can't, I can't just wing it.
Right.
I have to have a good material.
Right.
But for the first 5 minutes, they're on my side already.
Right.
And, and Hope used to say that apparently. too.
What's changed now, I think, with that is it's not 5 minutes anymore.
No.
So attention spans have gone on. So maybe that'll buy you 5 minutes in 1950, 60, 70.
Right.
Now it buys you 30 seconds to a minute.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Those are different times.
Heidi Foss tells a story. You were talking about Sugar Sammy being recognized on the 105, and that was a breakthrough for him. Heidi Foss tells a story about when she was first starting out, she was also waitressing at a, I think it was predominantly a dessert place. I don't know if anybody heard that on the podcast, but this could be our last.
They're dragging furniture or something upstairs.
Yeah. Absolutely. She talks about the first time she was recognized, but it was a more negative experience. It was people around the table and saying, "Hi, we saw your show tonight. Oh yeah, get us some pie." It was one of those. You're like,
Do you have a memorable heckle? I mean, have you been heckled with something where you thought to yourself, that's pretty good?
Take some time and think about it.
Sure.
Let's do a couple of commercials while
sir, I
Dave
know we have to do
sorts that out. Yeah. What do you want to
I'm
start
really
with?
worried about the rumbling now that David's
Are
pointing.
you?
Well,
yeah.
it's
not, they're rolling something
Might
back
not
and
be all
forth
that audible.
upstairs.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you don't have to do this in the studio all the time. You can do a podcast with an iPhone and a Starbucks.
Yeah,
I don't know if you knew
apparently.
that.
Yeah.
Dave, what's with you comedians taking, not you comedians, I mean, you and Joey. And,
What's with you comedians?
What's with you comedians? You and Joey. How come you don't have cars? Why don't you drive? Why do you take the bus and metro everywhere you go?
I live in cities. I rent a car when I need one, but I'm in downtown Montreal, and it's not practical to own a car down there.
Well, we're driving you home today in our 2020 Jaguar XF sedan from Jaguar Land Rover Laval, one of our sponsors, who give us a courtesy car whenever Terry comes into town. And I ferry him to and fro. So that's what we've got today. You can see the XF at Jaguar Land Rover Laval. You can see the F-Type. That's the two-door sports car. That's a fancy beast, I'll tell you. There's line of SUVs, the F-Pace, the I-Pace, and the E-Pace. Next time I'm getting the 550 horsepower F-Pace. I've already told them that.
Okay.
And they said, oh, yeah. Is that right?
It's quite a sales pitch, Ted.
And then you go over to the Land Rover side and you see the Defender, the Discovery, and the Range Rover. It doesn't get much better than that for British luxury vehicles. They also own McLaren Montreal. Those are pretty nice British. Those are beyond British luxury vehicles. Those are exotic cars. But Jaguar Land Rover Laval is where you want to go if you're in the market for a luxury vehicle. Go there before you make a decision to buy anywhere and check out not only the vehicles, but the service, the customer service and the customer experience at Jaguar Land Rover Laval. The DQ Bellis brothers, Nino and Renato, are the co-owners there. They're the nicest guys you'd ever meet, and their personality filters down through the staff. Everyone there will greet you like you're walking into a high-end joint, but it's not like some of the I think if you walk into a high-end fashion or jewelry boutique in Paris, I'm told the first thing they do is they look at your watch and then they look at your shoes.
Shoes, yeah.
And that's how they can tell whether you've got any business being in there or if you're just in there to browse. Well, even if you're in their showroom to browse, Jaguar Land Rover Laval will be happy to show you around and get you a cappuccino. And if you're interested in a car, great. And if not, well, thanks for coming by and having a look. Yep. Good folks. JaguarLaval.com and LandRoverLaval.com. And we thank them for their ongoing support of this podcast.
And that's another tenet of how Ted and I make our decisions about who we wanted to speak for over the years is, did we like the people behind the business? That was true at Jaguar Land Rover Laval. It's also very true of my friends at Matelas Bonheur. I met Norm, who has this had this odd quality of being fascinated by a good night's sleep and mattresses and all the things that have to do with getting a good night's sleep.
That was his passion?
Yeah.
What's your passion?
Yeah. It goes all the way back to, over almost 30 years ago now. And they delivered mattresses in a pickup truck, and then he got a small store on Gouin Boulevard in Saint-Geneviève, which is still there, by the way, and built this business through hard work and kindness and respect for his customers. And that's what you get when you go into a Matelas Bonheur store. You'll get a really nice shopping experience. You'll be greeted with manners and kindness and a nice welcome. And they'll ask you some questions about what you're looking for. Is it a mattress? Is it linens that they can help you with? Do you need a new pillow? Would you like to try out mattresses? They'll ask you a couple of questions about what you're sleeping on now and how you like to sleep. Do you sleep on your side? Do you sleep on your back? Don't be offended. They're just trying to steer you to the right place in the beautifully designed stores. And then they leave you alone. They make you comfortable so you can wander from mattress to mattress without being hounded by a sales staff that won't leave you be. I know that's a tough decision to make. You're flopping around on mattresses in a strange place, trying to decide if you're going to...
How many times have you been flopping around on mattresses in a strange place, Dave? Have you lost count yet?
I got to tell you, I feel like I'm flopping around on a mattress in a strange place right now.
If you shop for a mattress, you know what I'm saying. It's not an easy thing to decide, you're going to buy a mattress you're going to be on for 10 years. You want to have the Matelas Bonheur shopping experience. And there are locations on and off the island, all around the greater Montreal area, a family-run, Quebec-owned business that deals largely with Canadian suppliers. You'll be proud to shop there and proud to buy a mattress there. Start at matelasbonheur.ca. I'm going to ruin my commercial there for a minute.
Man. We were heckling you.
That's right.
That was my segue into Dave's worst heckling experience.
Nice.
I need more time.
You have a memorable heckle?
Not really. I mean, heckles come out organically, and in the moment they might be memorable, and you have to address them.
And they're rarely clever.
Well, and also, David's so good on his feet on stage.
Yeah. I remember there's a comedian out of Boston by the name of Rick Jenkins who tells a story about telling a joke that a lady in the front row was offended by, and he said, "I'm sorry," and he genuinely apologized. "I'm sorry. I realized that might have offended you." And she said, "I'm not offended. I'm just disappointed." And he said, that one stayed with me for a while.
Seriously?
I don't know if it's a heckle, but yikes, that sat right there.
That's like, sorry, Mom.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Do you have favorites when you look back at the history of comedy? Are there comedians that you were drawn to and think, oh my God, this guy is so good at it?
Pound for pound, I don't think anybody's ever been funnier than Norm Macdonald.
We're just talking about it yesterday.
And his last set on Letterman was a masterclass. I watched it in real time when it aired, and I probably watched it 20 more times online. It was a masterclass of stand-up. It had realness to it. It had a bit of emotion that even he seemed surprised by. But pretty much everything he's ever done, I've found hilarious and inspiring. There's not too many guys at that level.
Yeah.
He would be the first name I'd pull out.
Did you get to know him at all, Dave?
Not at all. We never
met him?
paths once.
Really?
I think we were both doing a show at Club Soda. I think at the same time at Just for Laughs one year, and I think we walked past each other. That's
shame.
the extent of my encounter with Norm. But he did tweet. His first headlining weekend was at the Comedy Nest back in the days when Ernie owned it, and he did. I want to say 2017, 2018, he tweeted a shout out to the Comedy Nest for being the first club to ever headline him.
Wow.
So there is a history with him in Montreal.
That would have been in the 80s?
I have to assume.
Yeah, because
I'm
he
going to
was
say
on
1980s, by the way.
Yeah. He was on,
be more specific.
When was he on SNL? Mid-90s?
Yeah.
Well, he was making OJ jokes on
Right.
on Weekend Update. Yeah.
He was. I went to see him. He was in at a club in Calgary when I was in Calgary in 2009. He was doing the club circuit back then.
He still did clubs. I mean, I can't speak to his last couple of years necessarily, but I know he was in a club at Rick Bronson's club in Edmonton. 2018, 2019. So he was definitely doing rooms.
Yeah. We were just Ted and I were just talking about him yesterday and making reference to 9/11 Airlines.
He did. Did you ever see that clip? I think it was actually.
So.
It's on YouTube, and it says Norm. Cut from Norm Macdonald's podcast. So I think they cut the clip. And it ended up, it's like a bootleg clip that ended up on YouTube of his podcast. And he's sitting there with two other comics, and he says, and I won't do this any justice because I'm not Norm Macdonald. He goes, for the second year in a row, JetBlue has been named the airline with the best customer service. And he turns to the other guys and goes, an airline that has the worst customer service? And the guy goes, no. He goes, 9/11 Air. He goes, what a terrible name for an airline. Reminds me of that tragedy. And one of the other comics goes, Jesus.
Wow. That's the best part. That's the best part. Jesus. Oh, I love that.
I don't know where we saw it or where
it was on YouTube. And then he goes,
go ahead.
He says, I walked through the streets of Manhattan through blood and bones looking for my brother. He was in northern Canada.
Oh, God. Wow.
Like, it shouldn't be funny, but it is.
Well, it's just because it's him and it's the way he delivers it.
Yeah.
But again, the guy going, Jesus.
That's fabulous. Craftsmanship, and I'll say it again, intent. Intent has a lot to do with it. No hate in his heart.
No, none.
Great commentary, and I don't know where I saw it, but he was doing a whole thing on boy wanting to become a girl, and trans, the transgender topic.
This
is recently, in other words, it would have been
this. Prior to his death, of course, obviously. And I saw it on YouTube, and again, I won't do it justice. And he was talking about, when a boy comes to you and says, I want to be a girl now, and I want to wear a dress, and then I just want to be a woman, and he takes a beat pause and goes, what about your cock? And only he could
then he goes, yeah.
Didn't
think of that.
Only he could get away with it. He was brilliant. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah.
You know what? What's interesting now is audiences are making decisions on jokes based on the setup sometimes.
Okay.
I'm not sure that happened as much in the past.
Yeah.
So recently I've heard comedians set up jokes about pronouns, for example.
Right.
And they'll just get into the setup and they'll mention pronouns, and the audience will decide before the punchline, we're not going with you on this.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's something that's changed when you talk about a cold wind blowing.
Right.
Audiences are making decisions sooner on whether they're going to stay on the bus with you or not.
So-
Not necessarily for the set as a whole, but for a particular joke.
That's a second show in a downtown comedy club on Saturday night audience versus the Huntington Legion audience, I would think, no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about stuff I've witnessed at the Comedy Nest. So certainly you're talking about
but when you talk about an audience, like as you know, Dave, a room, physically, the room itself, the physical room, but also the audience can develop a singular personality, right?
And at the best of times they do. Sometimes it goes wrong. But yes, normally you want an audience to come together as a unit in some way.
But I would think that a young urban audience would be less likely to be on board with a pronoun joke than an older rural audience.
Right, and they will decide collectively, we don't know where you're going with this. We're not sure it's going to be offensive, but we're not going to stay on this bus. We're going to get off the bus for this joke. And that, as I say, that's been happening more more and more. Certainly, I've seen it happening more, and I assume if it's happening in Montreal, it's happening everywhere.
I'm surprised anyone would even go there in a comedy club in a big city.
I'm not even sure. And in the example that I cited, I'm not even sure he kept going. He might have just decided to go up, to get off the bus himself. Yeah. It's like, well, this bus is stalled. I guess I'll get off with you. So that's interesting.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about magic. Do you have books to plug, by the way?
I have. My last magic book was in 2011. I think I mentioned, or 2012. So that, and also the books that I wrote were for magicians. It's very niche market. Yeah. So 2,000 copies worldwide would be considered a bestseller.
Wow.
So
can you still get them?
My first couple of books are out of print. You probably could find the latest one. But I will tell you that my books are not for people just starting out. There's fairly challenging sleight of hand. So I wouldn't, if you have a kid who's interested in magic, and by the way, if you have a kid who's interested in magic and you're listening to this, magic helps develop all sorts of sensibilities: physical dexterity, mental agility. It forces you to interact with people. It's a really good thing for kids to adopt and adapt. But don't start with my books. Go to Indigo. Go online, look for good, solid beginner's magic books,
and then graduate to the David Acker magic books.
If you want to, or maybe your son or daughter will decide that they had fun with it for a year, but they'll move on. But that year will be worth their while. It's worth it.
Let's do the tweet sheet while I'm thinking of it. Shall we?
You didn't bring cards, eh?
I didn't even think you'd want it.
Anything up your sleeve?
Nothing I want to share publicly. I forgot that podcasts have a video component.
Yes.
So that
they can.
My
well,
bad.
this one does.
We may have an open deck. I'm gonna go take a look.
Okay. I do remember. Doing a radio show not long ago, and the announcer asking if I would do a trick, and I remember saying on the radio.
Yeah.
It was an awkward moment.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you have Youpie in.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say there?
Yeah. Youpie.
Yeah. Right.
Thanks, Youpie.
But you can't even hear that because you got the big puffy hands.
Womp, 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 womp.
Yeah, or tennis. Tennis is great on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I listened to tennis on the radio.
Well, they do it now.
Yeah,
but it used to be a joke in radio. You used to say, this is as bad as tennis coverage.
The year the Canadian
at least
girl
you can hear the ball. I mean, you hear movement. You can hear when the ball.
Well, and if you have a good play-by-play announcer who knows the game, you'll be able to follow along.
Ping pong would be challenging on the radio, although maybe more entertaining because you can hear the ball faster.
Yeah. I bet the Chinese would be good at that.
I had a joke years ago. I had a joke about, this was one of my first jokes about, I guess whoever invented ping pong must have been pretty shit at it. Otherwise, it would have been called ping pong, 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 ping. Nice shot.
Are those? You got the cards there?
A souvenir deck.
Okay, there you go. If you're now, we should say. This podcast is available on all platforms.
That's right.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts,
MySpace,
your podcasts, Up Your Ass podcasts.
That's my favorite platform.
That seemed gratuitous.
It did, didn't it?
It really did.
And
I feel like you'd edit that out if you had the option.
But also on YouTube. So there you go.
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube,
where are we at? How many minutes in are we, Poseidon?
Waved at the camera.
Don't worry about it.
I was just gonna give people a timestamp if they're listening and they want to go to YouTube and watch the trick.
Yes.
An hour and 3 minutes.
Okay.
Lord.
So we have a deck of cards. If you're listening without video, I'm handing David Acker, who's wearing a lovely pink shirt.
I'll do the play-by-play. Here's Devontae passing the cards over to Acker. Acker with the cards doing the shuffle now.
So, and are we going to be participants?
So any magician watching this feels my pain right now. What they feel the pain of somebody being handed a deck they've never handled before. And more to the point, it's not a bicycle deck or a deck that magicians would typically use. It's a souvenir deck. So
what's a bicycle deck?
Bicycle is a brand of deck.
Okay, yeah.
So it presents particular challenges. Okay. That said, I will try to do something right now, and I'll try to do it with Ted because he's directly across from me. And to do that, Ted, I'm going to riffle up the corner of the cards, and I want you to just
laptops.
I want you to.
Yeah. There we go.
I just want you to say stop anytime. I'm going to riffle up the corner. Sorry, I got to start again.
Okay.
Anytime. Just say, oh, I think, I'm so sorry. So now the magicians feel my pain. Because I can't even riffle up the corner.
Okay.
Without but I'm going to try. Let's do it faster. Here we go.
Stop.
You got a card?
Yeah.
You see one?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to give you the deck. I'm concerned that people think maybe I can see at cameras or something.
No. If you're listening,
we're going to try this together. Then I'm going to try to read your mind.
Yeah.
But let me just. I think I have it. I'm going to try to determine what card you saw. It's only in your mind right now.
excuse me.
We'll start with the color. That's the easiest thing. I'm going to say it's either red or black. I'm going to say black. No. Give me another chance. Okay. I'm going to go with red.
Red is correct.
All right. Red, if I concentrate a little bit harder, I don't think it's a diamond. I'm going to say it's a heart.
It is a heart.
Very good.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, I'm not seeing a lot on the card. I'm going to have to go with, and it feels like a good card. You feel confident. I'm going to go with the Ace of Hearts. Was it the Ace of Hearts?
The Ace of
That's
Hearts.
the Ace of Hearts.
God damn.
Very good. Very good.
impressive.
We did it.
Yeah.
Holy
did it.
shit.
All right.
How did you
That's
do
it.
And that I could see that was a challenge for you.
It was hard to riffle up the corner.
because it's a very it's almost new and shiny, and the cards are not very pliable.
No, it feels like this was just broken out of a box.
Yeah.
So, for example, I can normally spring cards from hand to hand, but we're going to do this in real time. Either it's going to happen well or it's not. But I'm up to the challenge. Here we go.
So this is going to work, or we're going to do.
So that's not bad.
That's
So
really good.
They're not as badly broken in
Okay.
as I expected.
Oh,
It's not so bad.
There you go.
So
I
there
like
you
that
are.
fan thing.
Can you do that
Yeah,
again?
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it on the
What am
camera.
I doing? Oh,
Do the fan thing and the.
Yeah.
Must catch it on camera.
So this is
okay.
this is the kind of stuff when you start out with card magic that you learn, and it's not instantaneous. I can tell you that. You do this over your bed for about 3 weeks as the cards spray everywhere.
Play a lot of 52 pickup.
Absolutely. Were you thinking of that one? And you were thinking of that one? That's what I thought. Very good. There we go. Magic with a borrowed deck.
Okay.
All right, that was cool.
I
was very-
I like
It was
mentalism.
the only open deck that I could find.
Well,
no, it works
nicely
perfectly.
done. Nicely done,
I'm a
Poseidon.
big fan of mentalism. I don't know how old you are. I could try to determine your age psychically. Would you be okay with me trying that?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to use this notepad for this.
All right.
Number one, I need to know two things for this. Number one,
Okay.
what is your zodiac sign? What is your sign?
Capricorn.
Capricorn. Excellent.
It's a nice pen you have.
Thank you.
It looks like a Raggedy Ann pen.
Dave,
Yep.
Second thing I need to know, what year were you born? It helps me forge a psychic link. I'm not good at mentalism. I'm sorry.
Dave, are you on Twitter?
I am. I tweet a lot. I love tweet. I love tweet.
Yeah.
Okay, you love tweet?
I love tweet.
Yeah. There must be something going on with the algorithm, because I know as soon as I asked you that, I've seen you on Twitter.
Sure.
I've tweeted some, retweeted some of your stuff, but I haven't seen you lately.
It's a great form for short form jokes. It's a great form for that. Lots of comedians use it for as an exercise in writing, frankly, or a platform for writing.
I do something on my morning show on Light 106.7 called the Tweet Sheet, where we take 3 funny tweets and we share them with the audience. And for this show, we take the ones that you can't use on the radio because they're too salty, and we use them on this show. So I've got 3 that I thought would be good for this particular episode.
I'll be curious to hear what you consider salty.
They're gonna come up on the screen right behind you here, of those 2 handsome squinting men going, "What the hell's that over there?"
This is why you don't do photo shoots in the sun.
Yeah. From
Just a second.
Okay.
I just want it to be perfect for everyone. Okay, go ahead.
From at DVS Blast. FAQ, frequently asked questions for laundry hot dog, the hot dog you can eat while doing laundry. Question, won't the laundry police see? Answer, no worries. Laundry hot dog has a special diode that jams their signals. Question, my diode broke. Answer, you son of a bitch. You dumb son of a bitch. You've led them right to us. We're fucking dead.
That is outstanding.
Isn't it? Laundry hot dog. Where do you come up with that, eh? Oy. From at Adam C. Sharp, cute animal rhymes to say farewell. In a while, crocodile. Toodaloo, kangaroo. Ciao for now, Jersey cow. Why you still here, white-tailed deer? Just piss off, gypsy moth. Go to hell, red gazelle. Kiss my hole, woodland vole. Off you fuck, crested duck.
This is a good example of once we were at the second one, I was already looking forward to what was coming next. It's just a great setup.
Yeah, isn't it though? And I really like this one a lot. from @JitsPool. I want to start a new category in Special Olympics where deaf people have to find and fuck each other in the complete dark.
Jesus. Salty.
Yeah.
That's
Salty.
That's going to be the new safe word, I think.
Yeah.
David? Jesus. Thanks, Norm.
Yeah.
We have to we was line.
We have to say hi to Vozwin.
I'm sorry, my translator is coming in now. Hang on.
We want to just to take the opportunity to thank a couple of more supporters. This one surprised the hell out of me. You'll love this story, David. We get a call from Sean at a company called Vozwin, and he said, we love the podcast. We listen to the podcast at work, and we'd maybe like to look into becoming a supporter of the podcast. And I said, what do you do? And he said, well, we're all engineers. We're mechanical engineers. We help people bring inventions to life. And I thought, you've clearly dialed the wrong number. I don't know what you want with us knuckleheads, but
you know what?
It turns out.
Yeah, he has sponsored 3 seasons, and he's gotten work through the podcast. People who listen to the podcast have called him up and said, I have an invention idea, or I have an innovation idea, and I heard on the Terry and Ted podcast that you guys might be able to help me out.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, they're a technology strategy company. They make complex projects and innovation development become accessible. They can take you through production development. They can take you through the marketing process. And they also do what they call CTO style service, Chief Technological Officer. Terry and I don't do that. You have to go to Vozwin to get that. But if you have an invention idea or you have an innovation idea that you want to apply to an existing business, and it has an engineering component and you don't know what to do about it, you go to Vozwin and they help you out with it. Mechanical engineering and design, electrical engineering and design, industrial engineering and design, software development, inexpensive packages to help with solidifying your vision and developing requirements. Vozwin.com. Call them up, Einstein. They'll help you out.
Also, I like to say Vozwin. Vozwin.
Is that an acronym, or is it?
No, it's the name of the company, I guess.
Okay.
Vozwin. Oh, it's the name of the company, I guess. There's a good plug for our sponsor. I don't know. Call them. What do I know?
You're obviously the right people to sponsor. I think that's the name of the company.
And last but certainly not least, got to tip our chapeau to the Mersons. People ask me all the time, what do I miss about Montreal? And there's so many things I miss about Montreal living out on the West Coast. And the Mersons come to mind every season because I do put winter tires on, even though we don't have much of a winter in British Columbia. And I think to myself, I wish I could call Kara and Celso. Or if I'm having an issue with either my car or Jess's car, I think, where are we going to take it? I don't want to be screwed by, a big corporation or
unscrupulous mechanic.
Yeah, and that's happened before. As a matter of fact, that's how I ended up at the Mersons. 100 years ago, when the horse and buggy I was driving, when I had trouble.
You needed a new wagon wheel.
Yeah, I had trouble and I took it to a mechanic I didn't know and I got ripped off. And somebody said, you should take it to Mersons. And I didn't know where the Mersons were and I didn't know anything about them. And that was back when Bonnie and Mark Merson were running the company. Again, a family business. And now Kara and her husband Celso, Kara is Bonnie and Mark's daughter. Bonnie and Mark are semi-retired or mostly retired now. And now Kara is running the shop along with Celso and a really terrific staff. And when you take your car there, when they tell you you don't need brakes done, they're telling you the truth.
And they'll tell you when you do need them done.
They'll say, you're going to come back in the fall. By then, you'll probably have to have your brakes done. It's the kind of kindness and honesty and genuinely really great service that you get. And that's how they've lasted as long as they've lasted.
3 generations.
Yeah.
MersonAuto.com. They're on Saint Jacques, just west of Cavendish. As Andrew Carter likes to say, I'm going to steal a line from Andrew. He likes to say, mention my name and get a free blank stare.
Nice. Now, is Merson Auto an acronym?
I don't know. Go ask them, why don't you?
Is the Comedy Nest doing well, David?
Thankfully,
every weekend you got to.
Yep, we have shows 5, sometimes 6 nights a week, depending on special programming. On Sundays, the Comedy Nest is just fine. The pandemic was scary for all of us in live entertainment, both from the business side and the performing side. But thankfully, we've made it through. Look, we're in the Montreal Forum. And I will go on record as saying that they have been incredible partners to deal with. They've been very generous with us, very kind to us, particularly during a period of time where everything was very scary.
Yeah. If you want to bring in, I guess my question is, are comics coming to you or are you booking comics?
So when we first took over, it was very much us reaching out to people. As the Comedy Nest built itself up, that turned around. So now we have, and in fact, that was a bit of a sign of a turning point.
Nice.
And it happened quite a few years ago. But now, happily, there are comedians who have done Tonight Show and Colbert and all these reaching out to us because they've heard that it's a good club to work and a good city to play.
Good
That's
room.
great.
That's
That is
good room.
great, yeah.
So if you and Phil get together and say, we should bring Steve Patterson in, or bring Jerry D in, or what do you have to do to?
Now it's interesting that you mentioned those two names because both. I'm not as sure about Jerry D, but as I understand it, Steve Patterson is predominantly playing theaters. So the path for a comedian typically is any gig you can get, then comedy clubs, then theaters, and then ultimately if you can get to arenas or television or wherever that else leads. Steve Patterson typically does theaters, as I understand it. I believe Jerry D does as well. Yeah. So you wouldn't see Steve Patterson necessarily in a 150-seater comedy club. Of course, we'd be delighted to have him.
Yeah.
But
Isn't he a Montrealer?
Well,
he's a Torontonian who moved here.
He spent
because he met his wife.
That's right. He
Yeah,
spent years in Montreal. Yeah,
I was just about to say he owes you a debt of gratitude.
Yeah, I don't know if he owes us anything.
No. But
we'd be honored to have him.
He came to Montreal and made a bit of a splash.
Yep.
And believe it or not, I think the debaters helped.
There's no disbelief on my part there. The debaters, if it's not the most successful comedy radio show in North America, it's certainly got to be close to the top.
It's a CBC show, and it airs at 11 o'clock, I think.
Variously? Yeah. I'm not sure that's a word.
Check
it
your local listings.
Yeah.
Is it a daily show?
It's weekly.
That's what I thought.
And the format, I've done the debaters a few times. The format is they bring in two comedians and they give them a topic, and this is not done spontaneously. They have an opportunity to work on this, and they debate the topic. Sometimes the topics are serious, sometimes they're silly, but the results are always funny.
And there's a live audience.
Yes, they record in front of a live audience.
And it's a national show, so it's coast to coast to coast across the country.
They've had exceptional talent on that show. I've done it 3 times, had a great time every time. The experience is amazing. And Steve is the host. I think the original host was Sean Majumder, who was also terrific. Steve took over some years ago. It's a
great gig.
It's a great gig, but he also brings, he's like the talk show hosts we talked about earlier. He makes it look easy. There's more moving parts than he lets on, but he's particularly good at it, I agree.
And in particular, kudos to the CBC because they're still doing I got my start at the CBC. I would have never got off the ground without them. And I know the CBC is highly criticized in a lot of corners, but if you look as a student of radio in most markets across the country where all the evil empires, corporations have given up on newsrooms, so big talk radio stations that were big presence in many communities in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Edmonton, in Winnipeg, in Montreal, and Toronto. The corporations cleaned out the newsrooms, got rid of all the reporters, put children on the air who don't know news to take off of Google. And CBC still has the resources and are, as a consequence of that, are becoming the most listened to news stations in all the markets across the country and are producing national radio shows that they touch the communities into which they broadcast, things like Tom Power on Q, and there's a number of other ones that I steer away from private radio now because they've gotten rid of all the resources,
right?
And CBC still has them,
right?
And I think the debaters is part of that.
Very much so.
Programming.
And happily, and this sometimes happens in Canada where comedy outlets will focus on one market. They'll draw from Toronto, they'll draw from Vancouver. Happily, CBC debaters pulls in comedians from across the country, a very diverse range, geographically, comedically, and in all other senses.
Is that because Steve's plugged into the comedy community, or
I don't?
does he do the recruiting?
I don't believe Steve does the recruiting. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm fairly certain. I believe they just have staff that knows comedy, is always looking out, looks on social media, goes to the clubs, and is aware of who might bring not just funny to the format, but also a particular voice and a particular perspective. They're very good at that.
And you've traveled the country, so I think you'll agree with me. The country is so big, every region is different, and I think that's reflected in local comedy. If you're born and raised in Vancouver or Regina or Winnipeg or Montreal, there's a flavor to your comedy that comes from where you come from.
And some of that translates and some of it doesn't. Yeah. Also there are you learn the first time you go across the country, pace changes, pace of delivery. Yeah. So one of the first things I learned years ago, coming from Montreal, where everything was you had to deliver the jokes fairly quickly. You would, once you got to Alberta, once you got to BC, you had to slow down. They weren't interested in that pace. You could deliver the same jokes, but it had to be two beats slower.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's those are the people that are lining up for the Olive Garden at 4:30.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just I don't
know if it's a factor of age.
No. Meaning it's a slower pace of life.
Yeah,
it is. It's one of the things that we've noticed since we've been out in British Columbia. We noticed. If you walk in downtown Vancouver, it's way different from walking in downtown Montreal.
Yeah.
It's, when you walk in downtown Montreal, you have to keep up a certain pace or move to the left.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And get out of the way.
He doesn't mean politically necessarily.
Yeah.
No question about it.
There's a different pace.
I would say slower, I'm not sure is entirely fair. More considered.
Yeah.
It's a more considered pace, I think, would be the way I'd describe it. And I agree with you about pedestrians. I feel in Montreal, having learned and I'm a full-time pedestrian. I've learned I can be a pedestrian, and I can go to New York, which is the toughest pedestrian in the city, and I can pedestrian with the best of them. Yeah. So you're right. Once you get into other cities, it's you're dragging behind. You're like, get out of the way.
I'm emceeing a comedy show at an Alcoholics Anonymous convention this weekend. I was thinking maybe I'd slur the jokes. And then cry and then fight them.
Because of your history, you can do this.
That's right.
That's right.
He gets us, man.
What is it you enjoy about the bus? The metro, I get. The bus,
I
comprends pas.
I wish I had a bit for this that would lead us to a huge laugh. I don't enjoy the bus. Metro,
okay, good.
I love.
Right.
I don't take buses.
Yeah, because Ted said I said, "Where's David?" He said he's coming on the bus in Metro. And
Metro,
all you have to do is be on the 103 on a Wednesday afternoon at 5 o'clock. You'll never take the bus again.
No, and also, not to toot my own horn, but a guy like me who goes on a bus, I don't know if you guys remember, but I did a CTV special in 1996.
Oh,
so
I'd
be mobbed. I'd be mobbed.
That guy.
That's the guy from 1996. So I can't just hop on a bus willy-nilly. Yeah,
David, this has been absolutely terrific. We've wanted to have you on for a long time. We've got a long-standing friendship and respect for you, and we're just thrilled that you were supportive of us all those years, and we became friends through the comedy scene. So we've been dying to have you on. So thank you.
I'm very lucky, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to be on the internet.
I think it's called the WebNet.
Got it. Thanks for having me. It's always great talking to you guys.
Bye, Ted.
Bye, Ter.
Standing by, the Terry and Ted podcast has been brought to you by the UPS Store Canada, delivering more for small businesses in Canada.